They love to go after socialization because that's the one thing that the world loves to pick on homeschoolers with is socialization, and they don't know anything else. So socialization seems to be the one thing that they always nitpick at. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mandy, the Handmade Homeschooler, and today we are going to be talking about socialization, or what I like to call the homeschool S word. So I want to first welcome you to my channel, and if you haven't yet, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button because it really does help me and my channel out. And down below in the description box, I have a link for our free Facebook group where I'm going to pull all of these answers from. There are so many helpful homeschool parents in here, including myself, who would love to chat with you. Just hit the link down below and I will get you into our group. Just a note on this too, just a disclaimer, you do not have to feel like you have to give an answer, but if you want to have an answer, this is gonna be a video that's gonna be really, really helpful for you down the line, and that way you don't feel so caught off guard. But you absolutely do not have to make any excuses or make anybody else feel better about your homeschool and your kids and your homeschooling journey. This is more about other people than it is you. So just keep that in mind too. You do not have to even answer this question. But if you want to answer this question, like if somebody genuinely wants to know, these are some great answers to give friends and family members. So I know with the holidays coming up, the socialization issue is going to come up for a lot of homeschool parents this year, because it does every year. And usually it is from family and friends. It's usually not from strangers, but it's usually from people that you know that feel comfortable enough to ask you prying questions. And you know, I've had this question come up a lot in our homeschooling journey, and I feel like it came up a lot more during the first 2 years of our homeschooling journey, but not so much now. I don't really feel like people ask that question anymore now that we're about 6 years into it. But there's a lot of new homeschooling parents this year, and you might be one of them. So I want to give you the answers that my group members, experienced homeschool parents, are giving their friends and family members who ask this question. So you can, I don't want to say rehearse them, but you can just have an answer ready. And that's probably my biggest piece of advice when it comes to the holidays, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, or anytime you're going to be seeing your family and you have a feeling they're going to ask you this question. My biggest piece of advice is to have an answer ready to go. So from Misty, I know there are some awesome homeschool groups in my area that get together and do field trips and weekend get-togethers. So this was one of my absolute favorites, and this was from Susan. I don't particularly want my kiddos socialized by the culture in public schools. I much prefer socializing through time with friends at church, homeschool field trips, volunteering at various organizations, and family interaction. And I love that answer because that's usually my answer or some version of it. So, you know, I have this saying like, I've seen the village and I don't want them raising my kids. That's kind of how I feel when it comes to those types of questions a lot of times, but I have a snarky attitude and I'm working on it, okay? So this answer is the less snarky version of my own. So Teresa writes, sports, social events, play dates, and other group classes are all the socialization my kid needs. Who wants daily socialization? Seriously. By the way, I post on Facebook several times a week when we are doing outings, and now I only get, you guys are so busy, how do you have time for school? And this is what I'm talking about. This is why you don't need to feel like you need to have an answer, because they're going to find something wrong with whatever you're doing if you're doing it differently from them. They love to go after socialization because that's the one thing that the world loves to pick on homeschoolers with is socialization, and they don't know anything else. So socialization seems to be the one thing that they always nitpick at. Even though if you ask them what socialization is, most of them really can't even give you a good definition of it. So this is such a good example of you're never going to please everybody. So Missy says, socialization is a myth. Do our small children really need socialization? Guess what they get in trouble for at public school? You guessed it, socializing. Also, my child has friends and family and classes and church, and that is plenty. I used to get in trouble because I socialized too much at school. True story, you can ask my mom. Amber says, I hear this all the time. I tell them, honestly, it's not my kids I'm worried about. When I take my kids to the park, they love to play with anyone there, including the kids with special needs. It's the school kids whose parents tell them to stay away from certain kids that I worry about. Mandy, not me, but another Mandy says, someone asked me that and I said, we're in the midst of a pandemic. Socialization is against the rules. I love that one. Kamala says, we go to church, we see family, big families for both sides, co-op groups, plan events with friends. Mostly I tell everyone in the nicest possible way, we do us, you do you. My hubby says, kill it with kindness, and I really have been working on that. We sure get a lot of comments and funny looks when we are out and about during appropriate school times. Suzanne says, I thought school was for academics. We have many social events every week. We socialize regularly. I'm not worried. Me too. I like that one. Okay, so Amber says, I don't get why people are so worried about it. I teach elementary in a big church and there's lots of homeschooled and public schooled kids. There's not a remarkable social difference that I notice, except that the homeschoolers are usually stronger readers and can narrate really well. That's that Charlotte Mason for you. So Rebecca says, my kids get plenty of socialization at church, at the park, play dates, and field trips with friends and other homeschoolers. I don't say this, but it's almost like people think that homeschool kids are locked in a basement or something. So true. Antoinette says, public school is not the only place children can socialize. And to add to that, same-aged peers are not the only people that children can socialize with. Children can socialize with anybody of any age. Annette says, socialization is not what it's cracked up to be. I put my 2 older kids in public school when I had my 3rd. They were only in for about a year and a half before COVID hit and we went back to homeschooling. My oldest spent pretty much the entire time being bullied. I wish I never would have put them in. So Stephanie says, we thankfully have never gotten this question, but if we did, I would explain to them that when mine were in public school, she was bullied and harassed and the teachers did nothing about it, and that those are the kind of people I don't want her to be socialized with. Also, she's an extracurricular activity and does volunteer work. She is thriving and doing well. So Ashley says, my kids are all involved in at least 3 different activities outside of our home and get plenty of social activity. And again, I don't want you to feel like you have to make some excuse that your kids are socialized, because I feel like when people back us into a corner, they're almost, I don't want to say they're bullying, but it can feel that way. So don't feel like you have to give them an answer, because we don't answer to other people. But if it is someone who is like your mom or something who is concerned, you know, because homeschooling, especially to our parents' generation, is kind of a wild idea sometimes. You know, when you got to remember, when I'm almost 40, and when I was young, when I was really young, homeschool wasn't even legal yet. So I feel like this is kind of like a new thing to parents who are probably my parents' age, and it is kind of a wild idea. So even though homeschooling was around much before public school, and public school is really the newer idea, you got to remember they come from a different time where public school was the norm. So we have to kind of be gentle with them and be compassionate when we are talking to them. And I find that being compassionate and understanding rather than defensive works a lot better. And I don't talk like this to strangers. I only talk like this to family and friends. Strangers don't need to know about the extracurricular activities that my kids are in. And I feel like it's a very prying, weird question for somebody who doesn't even know us to ask. But some people are just weird, so take it for what it's worth. So hopefully you guys got some really great answers for this, and you guys can use these as kind of like a launching pad to make up your own thing to tell your family if you're going home and this is going to be kind of a stressful time. I know that Thanksgiving, especially, and Christmas, or the first year you homeschool, is always kind of a stressful time. So I wanted to be able to kind of alleviate a little bit of that for you and give you some cool things to kind of say to your friends and family that might be asking questions, who might be curious, and remember, sometimes they might be asking because they might want to look into homeschooling themselves. So don't automatically go on the defense. They might be asking you because they want to put their kids in homeschool, but they've heard about this socialization thing and they're worried about it. So that's why they might be asking you. They might not be asking you because they're worried that your kids are weird or anything. So don't automatically take the defensive position. Just take it for what it's worth. If it's a stranger, don't worry about it. If it's your friends and family, then use kid gloves and use some of these answers to help you formulate your own answer to these questions. And hopefully this was really helpful for you, because I wish I would have had this when I started homeschooling. I didn't know what to say. I felt like a deer in headlights. So hopefully you won't feel that way when you go home for Thanksgiving or holidays, or, you know, when you get an unexpected phone call. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Happy homeschooling.